So today's video, we're going to go step by step how to make $1,000 a month with Amazon KDP. And this is going to be anecdotal and it's going to be consistent across other successful sellers as well. We're going to avoid theory at all costs here, and we're going to talk about the things no one seems to talk about, but we really need to. So in terms of this video being anecdotal and consistent across other successful sellers, just to come into my account here, this is the old report. It's probably the easiest way to show my journey. I started back in 2011. I opened my account, had some brief success selling ebooks, even more brief success in 2015 selling ebooks. Then Amazon changed the way that people got paid, which pretty much cut off the entirety of my income in December or 2016, I think it was. Then I've pretty much spent the next few years doing not very much on Amazon, just here and there, uploading a few books. Then in 2019, started uploading low content books, so just spamming lots and lots of books, which is what people were teaching other people to do. And as you can see, the results here were pretty proportionate, not making many sales at all. Until 2022, we actually changed the way that I approached publishing completely. And as you can see from the last sort of couple of years here, we're looking at much healthier stats inside the account, with some months going up to 15,000 units per month, which is absolutely fantastic, obviously. So in terms of this being consistent across other successful sellers as well, this is what I've noticed, that not only is this what has worked for me, but it's worked for people that I know who are also successful sellers of books on Amazon. Let's get into this and go through the steps. Step number one is to align yourself with reality at all costs. So there is a brain rot scene on YouTube, and don't get me wrong, this is not a low blow toward other content creators, because I love a lot of the KDP channels. They have great information, but there is a very dirty corner of this domain that has led people to believe that the path to success is super easy. Now, if you come across videos that look like this, where it looks like the guy or the girl has shit themselves and then taking a picture of it, these type of videos are what lead people to quitting, in my opinion. Extremely exaggerated claims that momentarily make people feel very motivated and excited. Then when they realize that they can't reach these numbers, and not even close to these numbers, then they actually go ahead and quit. And the thing is, what's so frustrating to watch these videos is that extreme examples are being used, like Coco Wire, for example. So that there's obviously nothing wrong with trying to get to the levels that Coco Wire have achieved, but the reality here is that Coco Wire have a huge advertising budget that they can work with. They have extremely high quality book interiors, extremely high quality book covers that they're probably spending hundreds on alone, plus those interiors. There's a high investment that goes into what they're doing. They probably have someone that's running their social media account as well, which costs them a lot of money. That's where their success comes from, and it is so extreme that we cannot take this as being the type of publisher that we can aspire to be anytime soon. That's the reality. It doesn't mean that we can't make a ton of money, because we definitely can, but these extreme examples, I don't think they do anyone any good. So here's one perspective that has changed how I look at pretty much everything in life, especially publishing, is that when there are two extreme opinions, so one of the first extremes with publishing specifically is that KDP is saturated, you need to spend thousands every single month, there's no room for new sellers, etc, etc. Now the other extreme for publishing is that it's super easy, you can just get into these niches, it's low cost, Amazon does everything for you. This extreme is on the borderline of just being a flat out lie and misleading. So with both these extremes, the reality for everything always will just be in the middle. So step number two is to stop becoming reliant on tools and reviews for your books. So I know at this point you're probably thinking that when is there going to be some actionable information? These are the things that matter to actually getting your account up to the minimum of $1,000 per month, because we're talking about where people are putting their emphasis. So factually, you do not need any tools whatsoever. I am not against tools, but in my opinion, the costs are sometimes not proportionate to how effective they are. Now, if you look at the amount of people, and I've seen this myself, the amount of people that own, again, nothing against these tools, but the amount of people that own like Publisher Rocket, KD Spy, BookBeam, BookBowl, all these different research tools, it's just crazy to think that you don't need a single one of them, and yet people rely so heavily upon them, even though none of it has Amazon data that they're working with. Okay, so in terms of the tools that I actually use, I will only ever spend money on a tool that can create me content that I could not have created myself, or would have cost me a fortune to create myself. So I only really use one tool at the moment, and that is a historic BSR tool. There's a few of them out there, but the one that I'd recommend that is free is Helium 10's Chrome extension. I'm going to show you why I use that in just a second. But outside of that, I really don't use much. The emphasis here shifts onto relying on tools as opposed to where you will really see change. So when you put some effort, some time, effort, and money into something, you want to see a change. It is my opinion, when you put time and effort and money into using keyword research tools, that you don't see a proportionate change to that time, effort, and money. So the emphasis must shift onto focusing on your book covers, the demand of your niche, so understanding the buyer traffic, your unique selling point for your product, and your advertising approach. And we're going to get into all of this, the specifics, as we go through these steps. And I know sometimes people don't want to hear this. I know people like using their tools, but I think of it this way. I think, have I ever found a successful seller where their game changer, where their pivot point has been using a certain tool? And the answer is no. I've never seen it. I'm not saying it hasn't helped some successful sellers, but these people would be successful without the tools anyway. I can 100% promise you. So the other thing is reviews as well. People go absolutely insane over reviews. My opinion on this is that you don't need a single review to make sales. And this is, again, it is an emphasis shift, because what people will do is that they assume that their book is not selling because they don't have any reviews. They go ahead and use some sort of platform like the book swap things like Pubby. Go ahead, pay for a ton of reviews, and then not make any sales, even with those reviews on their books. Again, this is all about putting your emphasis in the right place. And this is probably more so relevant if you're selling low price kind of impulse buy books. I've tested it, I've seen it. You don't need a single review to start making sales with your book. I can promise you, after doing this for 10 years, I've had maybe 1 or 2 reviews that are given across like friends or families, but now after thousands of reviews on my books, not a single one of them has been paid for or incentivized or whatever. Okay, it's not me saying that reviews aren't important, because I think they are for longevity with getting the rankings, increasing conversions that were already good. But again, you should not put your emphasis onto getting reviews. And just to touch upon the tool that I was using, it's completely free, which is Helium 10's Chrome extension. So the reason that I recommend this type of tool, and any tool that creates content for you, is because we need to look at things that are completely and utterly factual. So if you're looking at the historic data of a book's BSR, like you can with a historic data extension, you can see how long the book's been selling for, and you can see if it's been selling for a prolonged period, which is super important to understand if the niche you're going after has got buyer demand. So for example, in this case, if I could see that this book was selling for $13, and then over the last sort of 2 years, it's been consistently selling between a BSR range of, let's say, 200,000 and 20,000, you could look at that and you could say to yourself that yes, this niche, or this book in particular, has had buyer demand for a prolonged period, which could give you the motivation or the go ahead to publish in this niche. Step number 3, and this is gonna be an annoying one. It's gonna upset people, and it's to not run ads. Because hold on a second, I thought ads were vital for publishing success, and I would say yes, they are. Like I think they are. But the problem here is that as soon as you press the launch campaign button, you are declaring to yourself that you are at an advanced stage with KDP. Now, just because Amazon ads are so easy, and this is by design, this is by Amazon's design to make running ads easy for you so that you spend money on their platform, on their product, which is their advertising tool basically. Just because it's easy to do, it doesn't mean that you should be doing it, because ultimately, as I said a million times before on this channel, what you're going to end up doing is pushing more traffic to a book that nobody wants, and then spending and wasting a ton of money, which is going to make you quit. Okay, so in most cases, like I said, this will fast track publishers to a loss of income, and you're going to end up quitting, because nobody likes losing money really. So when you are ready to run ads, which we'll talk about in the next section, you want to use educated advertising spend. So this is the problem that I have with strategies like YouTube strategies on running ads. The reality is, I don't think strategies work. So this is maybe slightly controversial, but everyone is at a different position. Everyone is selling books of different quality in different niches with different advertising campaigns with different budgets. The reality here with running ads is that you have to make educated decisions as you are running these ads. So for example, as you can see on the screen here, this campaign here, I spent nearly $1,000 on this book from ads. Now, did I go ahead and spend $1,000 just because I had $1,000 laying around? Obviously not. What was happening here was I was making educated decisions as the advertising was going up from $1 all the way up to $900, making educated decisions as to whether it was worth carrying on with the advertising spend or not, and basing these decisions off of the metrics inside of our account. So looking at the things like the clicks versus the orders, the cost per click, the ACoS, the organic sales, the rankings, etc, etc. Now in this case here, for a brand new book that I've just published, I've spent $74 on this and I've cut this campaign off already. Okay, so again, it's educated advertising spend, looking at the clicks versus the orders, the cost per click, the ACoS, the ranking for the book, etc, etc. So in step number 4, we're going to talk about where you should put all of your effort. If it's not into niche research tools, if it's not into ads, then where do we put our efforts? So one of the biggest problems that publishers have is that they don't know what stage they are at. And I would say this is probably applicable for 90 to 95% of people. They don't know whether they should run ads. They don't know if they're using good keywords, whether they have good book covers, etc, etc, which is why I set up the Raydog KDP service. If you want to check this out, I'm very confident it's going to fast track your success with publishing. There's a ton that we offer inside of this. We have lots of course content, all my strategies that I'm using. We have private rooms where you can get feedback from me and other sellers. We have limited events where we give giveaways, things like that. We have weekly coaching every single week, which gets recorded. And just recently, I did a huge case study, a huge deep dive into my main coloring book brand. It's worth checking out for this alone. It is my goal with my YouTube channel and with this service to bring the most transparent information with independent publishing that you will ever see. Feel free to check that out at chrisraydog.com. So step number 4 is you have to master these 4 things before you do anything else. Before you think about pressing the publish button, before you think about launching that advertising campaign, you need to master these 4 things. And those are your book covers, your niche demand, so understanding if there's buyer traffic going to your niche, finding a way to differentiate your book where it makes sense. I'm going to show you one of my books in just a second, so hold on, you're going to see exactly what I do. And then your overall strategy depending on the price of your book, which we're going to do in step number 5, which is incredibly important. And again, in the order of trying to be transparent with what I actually do on my account, this is one of the books I've recently published. It's a swear word coloring book. It's doing okay, about 30% organic sales at the moment. So in terms of book covers, when you're creating your book cover, you have to get better at creating them. Like 98% of people that show me their book covers are nowhere near good enough, and it's kind of shocking to see some of the book covers that people are uploading. Now, this isn't the best book cover ever. Yes, that's correct. It's not. But you need to take into consideration things like the color contrast, the effects that you're using on the text, the shading, making sure that you don't have one-tone backgrounds that make your books look amateur, using too much Canva font, using too many different types of font, which is why in the Raydog seller room, you can go ahead, the seller forum, you can go ahead and post your book cover and get the go-ahead from me and other sellers to see if your book cover is anywhere near the standard where it needs to be sold. So in terms of niche demand, I'm going to use this book as an example. We head over to Amazon, we search for the keywords that our niche is about, then we look to see if there are prolonged sales going to that niche. So in this case, we're selling a swear word coloring book. So all we're going to do is head over to Amazon, search for those keywords, relevant keywords, swear word coloring book, and just see if there is a demand, a prolonged demand for this niche. So in this case, we're going to head over to Amazon, we're going to search for swear word coloring book, and someone's already copied the book already, it looks like. So I'm going to scroll down just to see if the book is still ranked on the first page. Now, depending where you search from, the book should be closer to the top, but we are still ranked on the first page, still making sales. And the reason for that is because we understood there was a demand for these type of books. So what you're going to do, come over to Amazon, look for that search term, and then go through other independently published books and just make sure that 3 or 4 of the good books on the page, the first page, are making sales. So for example, we can check this one out here, and this is where I go ahead and use Helium 10's historic BSR tool, which for some reason now appears at the very bottom of the page. Going to come over to the all-time setting here, And what you want to do, this has been running for a long time, so it's a little bit hard to see this, but you just want to make sure that it's been selling for a prolonged period. And in this case, these books appear to have become more popular over time, which is interesting. So what I'd be doing here is taking a look from this kind of period here in the last year and just making sure that the sales are consistent throughout for a prolonged period. So what I'd probably do, since this one here is a little bit skewed by whatever was happening here, was to go back and then check some of the other independently published books in this niche here. So let's take a look at, so what I tend to do sometimes is look for the worst books in the niche that have been around for like a couple years, and to see if they've been selling for a prolonged period. Because if bad looking books are selling for a prolonged period, it means that we can make sales with a better offering. So I'm just going to try this book here. Nope, that book was quite recent, so we'll try and find one that's slightly older. Do this one here from 2023. So again, scroll down, we're going to take a look, make sure it's been selling for a prolonged period. And as you can see here, it started off well, had a dip here for a few months, and then starts selling again. So again, looking at sort of 2, 3, 4 or 5 books across the front page, just to make sure that these books have been selling for a prolonged period, is pretty much all the confirmation that I need when it comes to entering a niche. So from there, you need to differentiate your product, because if you're offering less than what's already out there, then you can't expect to make many sales. So in this case, if it makes sense to differentiate your product, then you should do so. So for example, it wouldn't make sense to make a swear word coloring book for kids or something truly out there that just wouldn't make sense for this niche. So in this case, because I was struggling to find a way to make this unique, what I did was to use the book cover style as my way of being different. So in this niche, I saw there's a certain type of color palette being used, and I thought I'm going to go a different direction, make this sort of purple, green, yellow kind of color to try and stand out. Now what you can do is to take a different angle for the niches that you find on Amazon. So in this case, just as an example, we could do something like animals swearing, although I think that's been done a few times before, but that would be just taking a different angle from the broad niche, which is swear word coloring books, right? So always thinking about your angle. If you can do something different or better, that's the way that you are differentiating your book from the competition to incentivize people to click on yours ahead of the rest. So step number 5, and this is something people don't talk about, but it's so important. In fact, it's incredibly important, and you need to use an overall strategy that is based off of the type of book you are publishing. So let's just break it down into low and medium content books and higher content books, so what I should say is that we should base this off the price of our book, but typically low and medium content books are going to be priced lower than higher content books. Okay, so here's the thing. With your strategy, it's my opinion that there is no blanket approach or strategy that is just going to work for everyone that tries it, okay? Which is why we need to understand, if we're doing low and medium content books, which a lot of us are, that we need to have a strategy in place for that. Or if we're doing high content books, we need to have a different strategy in place for that. So with low content books, it is my observations for years of doing this is that there will be failure percentages. We're going to say maybe 1 in 5, 1 in 10 of your books, depends on your understanding of quality, 1 in 5, 1 in 10, whatever, are going to make you sales in the long term. The rest are going to fail, okay? So the reason that we get into low and medium content books is because of, let's just call it Amazon's virality factor, where if you do hit it off with the audience correctly, you can make a ton of sales. You can make thousands and thousands of sales every single month. So the trade-off to this is obviously there's a lot of competition, and you're going to accept those failure percentages, which means you have to manage your advertising, okay? So it is my opinion that you should not do a prolonged spend for every single book that you publish if they're low and medium. What I teach in the membership, the strategies, is that you test your book into the marketplace with your budget that you're happy with, and then you see if it kind of locks into Amazon, if it grips it, and then it goes kind of viral to some extent on Amazon and makes a ton of sales. You test your book into the marketplace. If it doesn't work, if the metrics aren't lining up, you cut off the project. You let that slowly trickle its money back in over the course of the year, mainly during Q4. Then you move on to the next project. So with higher content books, from what I've done with higher content books in the past, is that I research keywords, specific keywords, for a much longer period. So I spent a long time trying to find these kind of less competitive keywords. Now with higher content books, you're unlikely to get those really juicy low BSRs, which is why you need to spend much longer doing your research for these books. And these books, they do allow for a prolonged advertising spend, which can lead eventually to more organic sales. And of course, you have a higher price points that you can work with here as well, which is going to affect how you approach advertising. So with higher price points, more area for advertising spend, which means you can spend longer doing this. So for example, with a high content book, I wouldn't come into this and spend 2 months creating the book, 3 months creating the book, and then only be willing to spend $100 or $50 on the advertising spend. Okay, whereas with the low and medium content books, because they're low priced, what I look at doing is releasing these quite quickly, putting a small amount of advertising budget to it, just see how Amazon responds to it, and then move on to the next book. And just as the same for a low content book, I would not have a prolonged advertising spend because we need to release more books because of this failure percentage. If you spend a prolonged amount of ad spend on low and medium content books whilst releasing a lot of books, you're going to lose a ton of money, I can promise you. So hopefully this is making sense. I can appreciate that I've kind of brushed over a lot of things here, but we're just touching upon this for now. If some of it doesn't make sense, just leave a comment and I'll make videos about this specific section going forward. So moving on to number 6, which is step number 6, which is going to be the big one, which is so cliche, and that is being consistent. So I'm not someone that is, I'm not preachy, I'm not very motivatey, if that's a word, but you have to be consistent with this business model. You just have to be, you have to understand the position that you're at and then consistently work on getting better and better and better. Again, if you're talking to me in the membership, for example, in the Discord group, and I'm not exactly ecstatic over your book covers, for example, it probably means that you're not ready to release that book and you need to be more consistent in a certain area. And in most people's cases, it's going to be something like making sure that they are consistently getting better at their book cover design, consistently getting better at finding niches, consistently getting better at creating titles and subtitles, right? But when you are consistent, these breakthroughs, they do happen. So again, the reason that I know this is because it's based off of facts. Okay, so we don't operate upon theory whatsoever. This is factual. The changes that I've made to my publishing business, what other successful sellers, especially the ones that are in the Raydog membership, are actively doing and seeing success from. All these things, they add up and they really, really, really matter. Just because they're not glamorous, they're not kind of eyewash bullshit things out there. Just because it's not glamorous, it doesn't mean that it doesn't work, because we've seen it and we will continue to see it as we go forward. These changes that make a huge difference. Anyway, if you want to sign up for the Discord, it's free at chrisraydog.com. Check that out. But that's it for this video. I'll see you in another one very soon.